Hi everyone, I'm Linda Sheldon-Fell with Grief Diaries. Today we're catching up with June Alexander from Australia. June has lived most of her life with an eating disorder, and today she shares a bit of her story with us, so take a look. Hi June, how are you doing?
Nice to see you again, Linda.
You as well. I don't hear any canaries this time.
They've been placed in another room. They can enjoy the scenery there while we have a chat today.
There you go. So I want to talk more about your eating disorder. You have struggled with anorexia for many years. And, food is something that we require for survival. And what that means is that every day we have, grocery shopping, and if not grocery shopping every day, we still have food prep. And so what is that like for someone with anorexia? Because you've got, a husband and for people with eating disorders with children and such, they still have to prepare food. So let's start with the grocery store. What emotions come up for you and what's your struggle there?
Right, well, I don't have that struggle now, but for many
Okay.
years I did. Um, it would be, I'd have a list basically, and I would often just buy the same food over and over again because one of the scary things about having an eating disorder is that you're afraid to try new foods. So
Okay.
often just the same foods every week, the same day, every day, year in, year out. Um, because you tend to feel safe with those foods, even if it's not enough. Um, so,
And
uh,
does that change? Would it be a cantaloupe and a few grapes for days on end, and then suddenly it changes, or do you stick with that for years?
it could be years. It's quite sad, yes.
Okay.
Um, I don't like mentioning what I ate because I don't want to be triggering for
Sure.
others, but
Fair enough.
growing up on a farm, I would, my mother didn't, a lot of things on food on the farm was self-grown, so, but I would tell my mom who was serving the meals when I was a child that I would only eat this and this on my plate, and she would be very upset. Um, and so it created a lot of stress because she couldn't understand why I wasn't eating anything else. And then sometimes she would insist, and then I'd have to try and hide the food. So it is very frightening to eat uh, different foods, and sometimes you can get stuck on very strange foods.
Is that
Uh,
right?
Yes. For instance, I did. My mind honed in on meat pies, which are very popular in Australia, meat pie and tomato sauce. Um, but of course, I was staying with an aunt in the city at the time, and they were available. I knew how many calories were in them, so I could walk so far, and then I could have my pie. But when I went home to the farm, my mum didn't buy these pies, and she had to make them in her little wood stove, and I wouldn't eat them because they weren't exactly the same as the ones that were in the shop, and I didn't know exactly how many calories she was putting into the pie. And so she would get really, really upset because she was trying to make something I said I would eat, but then the fear of eating something that I didn't know exactly what was in it just created more stress. As I got older and was, 18, 19 and able to go and shop myself and at 20 married, so had my own kitchen, uh, yes, I would buy, I'd look at the number of calories on the labels, which in those days there weren't very many of them. Unfortunately, today they're everywhere,
Right.
and
Right.
yeah, it. If I had my way, there would be no labeling of that sort. Unfortunately, today there is, and it's also in our takeaway places and restaurants, and um, so the eating disorder just wants to control us and isolate us, and doesn't care about a healthy nutrition for our body, and so it just makes one layer of trouble after another.
And,
And
and
as
so,
I said,
so when you went into a grocery store, did you have to almost like have blinders on so that you couldn't, you just didn't, was it too risky to go down certain aisles, or what was that like?
um, yes. I mean, I transitioned into bulimia, so sometimes if I was feeling really upset, uh, I would maybe go and buy a bunch of Mars bars or something, and tell the, the, the eating disorder in my brain's going, yes, well, this is the danger where you do eat something that's not on your prearranged list of acceptable food for the day. Once you overstep that mark, then you think, oh, well, uh, I might as well eat everything today and start again tomorrow, which is a very sets you up in a up and down cycle, and it's very dangerous to get caught in that, and many people do. So on those days, you might go and hog out, absolutely guts. I used to wonder why my stomach didn't burst some days. And then after that, you feel a lot of self-loathing. So some days, on those days, you don't care what you would eat the house if you could. I mean, you eat it, and even if you don't particularly like it, you will eat it. And so,
That's interesting that you bring that up because I've been open about being a food addict, and it's that same just having a nibble of something down the rabbit hole I go. I'll eat the whole batch. The whole it's like you talked about with a bunch of Mars bars. Once I step over that boundary, and for me it's just a nibble. Then there's no stopping it. Like you said, it's eating the house. What do you think in your experience? Because now you're a very big advocate about eating disorders and the dangers and such. And our experiences are very different in that mine's a food addiction and yours is the other end of the spectrum, but it also led to bulimia. What stops one person from like I've never had bulimia, and is there a way to identify what triggers someone to go past that and become bulimic? How what's the thought about that?
yes, well, when you have anorexia and your body is starved of nutrition, it's very important to have a lot of expert guidance in starting to eat again, because and to do gradually with nutrition, with guided 3 meals and 3 snacks a day, because what can happen is our body's being so starved. It's a bit like on from famine to feast, and it's think of a seesaw, and you have two children balancing the seesaw, and with anorexia you're down the bottom here, and then suddenly you're able to eat again, and your body just wants to make up one lost time, and suddenly you get caught in this up and down cycle, and you're eating too much or you're not eating at all. It's a very unhealthy way to live, and with that the moods go up and down, and
Yes.
relationships go up, everything goes up and down. So you're still in a terrible place. So but with guidance, with therapeutic guidance, you you eat the 3 meals and 3 snacks a day, which is initially a very frightening thing to do.
Okay.
But gradually, it's like a calm sea rather than a stormy,
Choppy waters.
choppy waters.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's about having regular nutrition and having enough of the different food groups, because often when we have an eating disorder, whether it's eating too much or too little, we're often having too much of some kinds of food sources and not enough of others. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
it's important to have the balance because our body may be craving oils or craving certain fats or
Sure.
craving, protein or carbohydrate. And so it's really important when we whatever eating disorder we have, that we have a lot of guidance in starting to eat normally.
What's
Uh,
normal. And so when you became an adult and you had to do food prep for your family, let's say preparing dinner, what was your emotions around that? Because in a grocery store, you might have your list and you might have your blinders on, but with food prep at home, you actually have to be touching it and doing something with it. So, what was the struggle for you back then? And I'm guessing you don't have that same struggle now.
no, I don't have that struggle now. I actually, I didn't think it would ever happen, but I can actually listen to my body say what it wants for the next meal, which is a beautiful
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
It tells me when it wants a nice juicy steak or it wants a piece of salmon. Yes, I can listen to my body and it says it wants this, which is wonderful. I never thought that day would come, and I'd like anybody who's listening to this to know that this day can come. And and I used to wonder if I'd ever know what it's like to be hungry or like to have had enough food. It was either too little or too much for so many years. But just to let my body tell me rather than my eating disorder tell me. And so when I was cooking for my children in my 20s, when they were young, yes, I always made, well, I knew a lot about nutrition, of course,
Sure.
didn't I? Just wasn't applying it to my own life. Um, so I did look after that, cooking meals that they would, very nutritious meals. But I often wouldn't perhaps put, for instance, the meat on my plate. I'd only put it on my children's and husband's plate. The foods that and desserts were another. I would make them, but not eat them. Um, it, and so it it affected um, it affected every meal was actually
Well,
a
and
stressful time.
right. And did your children or your husband ever notice that you might be giving them either larger portions or food that you didn't have on your plate? Did they, at some point, children get older and they become more aware and perceptive? Did that time come for your kids and your husband when someone said, your plate doesn't look the same as ours?
Yes, yes, it did, and I would always, you become very good at making coming up with excuses and reasons, which only adds to the secret layers that store up inside you. And you would always give yourself the smallest piece, or alternatively with bulimia, you might not eat much. You might have visitors over, and that's another stressful time. And
Yes.
when you don't eat much while they're there, but maybe when they go, it's been such a stressful thing having them that suddenly you're eating everything that's left over because that's some way of uh, suppressing all the other things that you haven't even started to acknowledge yet. So,
Right.
and then, so using food to manage our feelings is part of getting over an eating disorder. We have to have help to start confronting and finding out what these feelings are.
The underlying issues. Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
issue, yeah. So
Wonderful. Well,
then
thank you so much, June. I appreciate you sharing that walking us through that. And I've got a big helicopter going overhead, so it's a little noisy on this end. But thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you next time when we can talk more about it, okay?
okay, that'll
All
be
right.
lovely.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
June. See you next time.
Thank you. I will, and you too.